We now arrive at Station 12 on the Via Dolorosa. In the physical world in Jerusalem, we are still in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The last few stations are taken up the stairs at the top of Calvary, and we continue to be there in that small piece of real estate that is probably the most significant in all the world for us. Under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre's dome, we have not only Golgotha, where Jesus died, but also just a few feet away, the tomb where he was buried. This is where our whole redemption took place, where not just our souls, but our bodies. And it says that even all of creation is under this curse, and that will be released. Nature will be released with the sons of God. Now, I told you I would show you this painting. I hope you can see it here. If you notice, this is Rembrandt. It's called The Raising of the Cross. There's Jesus being raised on the cross. But here's a funny thing. They didn't wear hats like that back in those days. This is a Dutch painter's beret. It's a hat worn by a Dutch painter. In fact, this is a self-portrait of Rembrandt himself. He's making a statement here. Who's the one pulling to raise the cross? It's Rembrandt. He said, it's my sins. It's my sins that put him on the cross. I'm the one that put him on the cross. I was there. This is me with my Dutch painter's beret, a self-portrait of him in his masterpiece. And then you look here and you see this man, and in his hand, you can't see it here, it's too dark, but there's a lance, like a sword or a lance, and he's handing it to you. You could see that. He's saying, because you put him on the cross, you take the lance and you pierce his heart. You're the one that pierced his heart with your sin, with your constant disobedience and rebellion. He did this for you because he loved you. You're the one that pulled him up on the cross. Here, you take the lance and you pierce his side. It's a most marvelous painting. Rembrandt understood what was happening there at the cross and why it was happening. Now, I talked earlier about the scandal of the cross. Remember when we were early on, I talked about the anthill and the scandal of God becoming a man. But here we really see the ultimate scandal, the scandal of the cross, where it says in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 12, it says that he who gave up his prerogatives, he who existed in the form of God, gave up his prerogatives of being God and became a man. That was huge, to leave the heaven. And even at times he says, only my Father knows this, because he gave up some of the divine prerogatives to become a man. He could no longer be everywhere at one time. He could only be wherever his 2 feet were. And he gave up all of that to come down and to be a man. And not in one of the best times of world history to live either. And then he now goes through all of this, and it says that he came a servant even unto death, so that in the end every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. By the way, that's an ancient poem. It's an ancient hymn that Paul wove in to the book of Philippians. The New Testament is full of these ancient creeds and poems and hymns that are woven right into the text of some of the writings. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18 is another one, just a hint. So this great scandal of God becoming a man and suffering all of this agony on the cross. And like I said earlier too, it was a merciful 3 hours, because Jesus didn't last long on the cross. The understanding is he was on the cross at about noon, and he died around 3, when in the springtime it's already starting to get darker. And when on the Sabbath, on a Friday night is the beginning of the Sabbath, when the first star shows, everything has to be done because the Sabbath starts and there's no work after that point. And so they're in a panic to hurry up and get him off the cross, because if not, they can't get him down later. They're going to have to wait until a day or two. So they're in a hurry. So the Roman centurion comes ready with his mallet to break their legs, to make sure because see, if you break the legs, then they can't hold themselves up and they drop down and they suffocate. Very simple principle. If they can't raise themselves up, if their leg bones are broken, they're going to suffocate by hanging, and their diaphragm won't work. But he saw Jesus and he didn't kill him. He didn't, hit him with the legs and break his legs, because in the book of the Old Testament, it says that no bones of his were broken. When you killed the Passover lamb, you couldn't break any of the bones of the Passover lamb either. Because the Passover lamb is a picture of Jesus ultimately on the cross, who we say, Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. And no bone of his body was broken because he died within that 3 hours. And the Roman soldiers obviously knew when someone was dead because they did this every day. When Jesus died, it says the curtain in the temple was torn. The curtain in the temple was 4 inches thick, and it was several stories high. It was huge. Do you remember if the temple curtain was torn from the bottom up or from the top down? It said it was rent from the top to the bottom, which implies that it was a work of God. It wasn't me starting down here, ripping it up to the top. It was God who started. He ripped it all the way down. What was the purpose of that? Why is that mentioned in the Gospels? Why is that important? Because that curtain is what kept us Gentiles away from God. In fact, it even kept the Jewish people away. Only the Holy of Holies was only the priest could go in there at that point. We were outside. In fact, us Gentiles were outside into the courtyard. We couldn't even come into the entrance part of the temple. Only Jews could do that. There was a wall that was on either side. And when we go to Jerusalem, when we go to the Temple Mount, I show that wall. It was a knee wall, and there were signs, death to any Gentile who goes beyond this point. You could come into the courtyard of the temple, but you could not go past those 2 walls. If you did, it would mean death. When it says that Jesus died on the cross, the curtain of the temple was torn down. And Paul tells us in the book of Ephesians that by his cross, he tore down the wall of separation. That wall that kept us Gentiles away from God, it was torn down. And we were now invited to come into the temple, into the presence of God. And now even the curtain is torn. We can walk right into the Holy of Holies, right to the mercy seat and ask God for mercy. We can step right into the presence of God. And in a way, through his death, when he died on the cross, God now is no longer kind of symbolically stuck in the Holy of Holies. He now can come out, and he comes into our hearts, and he comes to us Gentiles. We were at one time without God and without hope in the world. Very dismal prognosis. But because of Christ, and he tore that curtain down and broke down the barrier of the dividing wall, we now have access to come into the very throne of God. And not only that, we don't have to let me put it this way in a positive way. We're able, Jesus said, now to call him Abba, Father. And it's so delightful when I'm in Israel and I see a little boy chasing after his father going, Abba, Abba, Abba. I was out fishing all night with the Sea of Galilee. When we came in, the boy was calling to his father on the boat, Abba, Abba, across the water. We now can call God Abba, Father, which is a very intimate term like daddy. Well, there's so much to say about this. I just want to bring back to memory that this is now in a garden, and that what happened in the Garden of Eden is being reversed. The tree of death brings about life, and the centurion said, surely this is the Son of God. And the man who was a thief on the cross called out, these 2 thieves are all of mankind. You are either one who rejects and scoffs at Jesus Christ, or you are one who acknowledges him and says, have mercy on me, a sinner, and remember me today in paradise. We are one of those 2 thieves. Which thief are you? Which one is you? They're both thieves. They're both guilty of something. We're guilty as well. And Jesus is ready to heal and to forgive right on the spot because of what he's doing, his death. I would suggest that we all become the good thief who says, have mercy on me, and acknowledges Jesus in his salvation, and not the bad thief. And so Jesus dies. I can just imagine God the Father in heaven looking down with such great love and admiration and saying, it is finished, echoing the words of his Son. The death has been completed. The redemption of mankind and the whole created world has been accomplished. The work is done. He did it. This is the defining moment in all of human history. After our creation, the defining moment when God became man and took on flesh and died on the cross in our place. So now he has died.